Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we got Roger Drummer online. Roger is my business partner with HerbWorks.com, and many of you know us through our company. You buy our products either T-on-Chi or Inner Peace. We're known for stress and brain products. If you haven't tried them, you might want to take a look at them at HerbWorks.com. And tonight we do these calls weekly, so make sure you get on our list. If you're a customer of ours, you will already be on our list. But again, you can always email us through a contact form at HerbWorks.com. Get on that list if you don't want to miss these calls. In addition, we do have our podcast station up, and that's on, you can find us on iTunes. Just do a search for HerbWorks. Or if you go to Google and just search HerbWorks Podcast, you'll be able to find it on Stitcher, Blueberry. I don't think iTunes populates. You have to go directly to iTunes, but you'll find it there. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's and diabetes, and how diabetes actually can possibly be a precursor to Alzheimer's. And there's really no one better to talk about this subject than my business partner, Roger. And I met Roger over 10 years ago, and I was dealing with a lot of issues that I didn't know at the time, really had to deal with, I want to say a dysfunctional brain, and Roger will probably still tell you I still have a dysfunctional brain. But I was dealing with ADD, chronic fatigue, and low-level depression, and I drank one of Roger's tonics, and it completely changed my life. And I knew back then that I had to get Roger's information out into the marketplace, and this is what we do now. We educate the public. We make products for brain and stress. And Roger's just an amazing individual in the way he educates. He's able to explain things in very simple, educational ways that everybody can understand, doesn't talk over your head, and you'll get a good taste of that tonight. So, Roger, I know the topic you wanted to talk about is dear to your heart, and it's Alzheimer's and dementia and diabetes and how it all relates to each other. But I'm going to turn this over to you, and let you do your thing.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, I do like talking about Alzheimer's and diabetes in particular, just because it's so closely related, and the fact that it's, in my mind, there's a lot of things that trigger Alzheimer's. I mean, it's a broad range of conditions that contribute to it, but probably the biggest trigger is your blood sugar level and being diabetic. And so when you start to look at how in the last few years, let's say the last 10 years, they've really had intense studies into diseases, especially chronic diseases, things like obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, all cancer, all these different things that are considered chronic and cause the most deaths in the United States. Heart disease is another one. When you really look at the science of it, you see there's a deep relationship to blood sugar levels and diabetes. In fact, on our topic tonight, Alzheimer's and diabetes, you look at the fact that people with diabetes have a 4 times risk of getting Alzheimer's. If you're a diabetic that takes insulin, you have a 5 times risk of getting it. I mean, that's huge. And surprisingly, there's enough research out there now that we know that you can actually do something about it on your own. You don't have to wait for your doctor to help you out, although you should be under medical care if you have diabetes. But the reality is that most of what we call type 2 diabetes is actually a choice. It's a lifestyle choice. It's how your body is actually reacting to the food you eat and your lifestyle. So you can change that. Everybody can change that. You have the power to change your diet, to change your exercise program, to really get on a different type of lifestyle that will complement your health. And believe me, your body will react to that and lower your need for medicine. In fact, it might just get rid of it. And this is why in one of my previous talks, I said, type 2 diabetes might not even be a disease. It's just how your body's reacting in the moment to what you're giving it. So if you can change what you're giving it and it changes, it can't really be a disease. It's just a reaction. So we all have the power to do that. But now, especially when you look at the relationship between that and dementia and Alzheimer's. I'm going to read you some statistics because they're really sad and they're really frightening. and one of them is 10% of the 65-year-olds in this country have dementia or Alzheimer's. It's going to be 25% of the 75-year-olds, and 50% of people that are 85 have Alzheimer's and dementia. So by some estimates, it's going to hit around 106 million by the year 2050. Now, think about that statistic. If we don't change our population much, and it doesn't go up that rapidly, we're talking about close to a third of the population. Let that sink in for a minute. That's the estimates, because it's going crazy with the way that it's spreading around this country. But if you really look at statistics and you look at the fact that in the last 30 years, diabetes has gone just as crazy. You know, they're estimating that a third of the country now has diabetes, or what they call pre-diabetes, and there's people walking around with metabolic syndrome, which is the same as pre-diabetes, and a lot of the people with pre-diabetes don't know they have it, because it's a kind of a typical thing in our country not to go to the doctor unless you have a chronic problem crop up. So you may be suffering from high levels of blood sugar and what they call pre-diabetes for years without even going in and finding out. And so all these things, again, are statistics that could easily be brought down by a change in diet. Now, I know this snuck up on a lot of people because of the way they changed the food supply. But one of the things about becoming educated, being on calls like this, is that you have to make a commitment to not be one of those statistics. Make a commitment that you're going to do something on your own to change your life and to change your lifestyle, because it's not just about you. It's about you, your brain, your family, everybody involved in your family. This is such a stressful disease for everybody that takes it. The entire family has to pitch in to take care of people. It's a financial drain. The amount of money that's being spent on it now is around $60 billion a year. And, so you just have to take a look at it and with some common sense decide that you're not going to be part of that group. One of the reasons Alzheimer's is such a big topic with me is that, I'm in one of those brackets of people that is highly susceptible to getting dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's not because of my lifestyle at the moment. It's because of injuries I've suffered to my brain when I was younger. So if you've had a major concussion, I mean you've lost consciousness, for a period of time. I've had that happen on numerous occasions. And if you've lost the ability to even speak or make sentences for a while, which I have, then you're in a danger zone of probably having between a 25 and 50% higher chance of getting it. So, I take care of my brain. I pay attention to my diet. Luckily for me, I've done it long enough to where it's not even any work for me. And this is the thing I tell people: when you go through a change of diet in the beginning, it seems like it's so strange and radical and hard to do. But once you get into the flow of it and you kind of make food your hobby, because, people that know me personally, food is my hobby. They know I'm always cooking. I'm making food. I'm buying food. I research. I just love food, and I love finding great food. If you can get into that mode where it almost becomes a hobby for you, just learning things about food and how you feel after you eat great food, it's really easy to get on a different program and change your entire life, because it's exciting. You can see the changes in your own health. And again, it's not just for you. It's for you, your kids, your grandkids, all these people that will be robbed of you, the real you, if something happens to you. And so when you look at this risk that diabetics have, and, 5 times if you're on insulin, why is that? Well, a lot of people don't realize when you talk about diabetes and you talk about the main thing that diabetes really generates, which is inflammation, right? Well, that inflammation is not just caused by the sugar. It's caused by the constant exposure also to something called insulin. We all know insulin. It's the hormone your body secretes, and we don't think there's anything negative from it. But the reality is, when you have insulin resistance, meaning your cells are no longer listening to it, sometimes your body will actually produce more insulin to get it to respond, but it won't respond. And then sometimes even type 2 diabetics get put on insulin because your cells aren't responding to it. And that kind of forces your cells to take in more, stored energy, to clear the blood sugar out and be exposed to more insulin. And all these things cause inflammation. Insulin's great if it's just doing its little job of clearing things out right away and you're not using it a whole lot. But when it's in high amounts, high doses from outside your body, inside your body, and it's lingering in your system all the time, it causes a tremendous amount of inflammation itself, and that triggers a host of all kinds of inflammatory reactions from your body. You might be producing too much cholesterol because of it, not clearing cholesterol out because of it, building up more plaque, having more inflammation in your arteries, which then causes you to make more cholesterol, having a different reaction to fats that are in your bloodstream because of all these inflammatory chemicals. So it all goes kind of back to not regulating your sugar, because that's really the trigger for everything and what starts the whole cascade in your body. Now, interesting enough, I was listening to a lecture by Dr. Perlmutter where he was interviewing a researcher, and they were talking about a different condition connected to diabetes, which I've never actually, thought of, and it was just an unbelievable revelation, because we all think your body just secretes insulin and that's it for blood sugar, but it's not actually true. It secretes something called amylin, which is another type of hormone that comes into play when you're actually eating. Amylin clears blood sugar too, but it makes sure that your body keeps its blood sugar regular or even when you're eating a meal so it doesn't spike too much. So it controls another hormone which has to do with blood sugar called, I think it's pronounced glucagon. And that particular hormone tells your liver to secrete more sugar in case your sugar's low or something else is going. In fact, if you're stressed out, that's the hormone that causes you, when you're stressed, to flood your body with more sugar and more sugar continuously. And if that goes off kilter, then it's always just causing you to secrete more sugar along with the insulin and all the other hormones. So you can see it's kind of a cascading mess in your system. And so the interesting thing about amylin is that they now have research showing that it's related to the plaque buildup in your brain. So not only is the high blood sugar from diabetes a problem with causing the inflammation in your brain, the insulin is, and the amylin, the other hormone that secretes, is now being shown to cause its own type of plaque similar to the amyloid plaque that we've all heard about with Alzheimer's. So all these things, it sounds really frightening, and it sounds like, gosh, what can we do? What can we ever figure out what to do with this? And the reality is, well, we already know. We just have to change our diet. We just have to do some basic things that are good for our brain. And it all these things, all these chronic diseases really come back to the same principle, is that we have to get on a type of diet and a lifestyle that is just beneficial to us at all times. In other words, you have to sit down and get a program, because you're not going to get a program once you're stressed out. You have to deal, the thing about trying to figure out a program when you're in the middle of too much stress is that it's never going to happen. You'll never stick to it. So you have to sit down and just get a program going where you're going to deal with, number one, your stress. You're going to change your diet. Those are the two big things, stress and diet, and figure out how you're actually going to work that into your program and what you're going to do at all times. And this is why diet's important, because you have to set up your diet, get everything in your house to be what you're going to eat, what your lifestyle is. So that's what you are always engaged in doing, no matter how your feelings change and how maybe you are caught up in excessive stress one day or depressed one day or whatever's going on. It doesn't matter, because you've already set up your lifestyle. And this is what it is. And that diet will help even you out over a period of time. One of the things I've always talked about with stress, and you've heard this, I'm sure, but I'm going to keep telling everybody and until they finally get it, is that excessive stress hormone disrupts everything in your system. But most especially, what it messes up is your brain function. Your brain function, or what they call your hippocampus, which is the energy center it's the center of memory in your brain. think of it as like a little computer chip that controls laying down memory, accessing memories you've already had, and the speed by which you retrieve memories. All these different things are related to your hippocampus. Now, your hippocampus itself isn't really destroyed by contact with cortisol, but for some reason, when you have high levels of cortisol in the brain, your hippocampus opens up it almost turns into a sponge for taking in toxins. So the trigger of the excessive cortisol from stress just starts the process by which your brain can be just suffering almost an onslaught of toxins, whether it's toxins from the air you're breathing, your diet, pesticides, all these different things. The other thing about stress, when you have high stress, is that there's something about that opens up your blood-brain barrier, so more things make it up into your brain. So the more toxins you have in your diet, the more that's in your blood, the more that makes it up into your brain, past that special filter system that's supposed to keep them all out. So your exposure to all these things goes way up, and again, the trigger is stress. So stress has a direct effect on how much damage your memory center, the hippocampus, suffers in your brain. Now, the interesting thing, too, when they test levels of A1C, which is a common blood test everybody with diabetes should have, it shows the levels of your glucose over a 3-month period or so. It's different than fasting glucose in the morning because that'll show you what it is that particular day. And I'm sure almost everybody eats really well the day before they go and do that test, right? So, but they want to look at it over a period of time. And so it's interesting when you have high levels of A1C, it shows that your hippocampus is actually shrinking in your brain. So, there's all these different relations that keep going back to stress and diet. Stress and then high levels of sugar. Hippocampus is shrinking. What does stress does? Stress hormone damages the hippocampus of your brain. It's all so interrelated. And yet, again, dealing with your stress and dealing with your diet is the big step for almost every chronic illness known to man. When they look at an Alzheimer's brain, when they do an autopsy, what they see, what all doctors will tell you is that they're looking at a brain that's been on fire. It's literally just been so inflamed and so dealing with these inflammatory chemicals from so many different things like stress, sugar, toxins, pesticides, all these different viruses and bacteria, all these things create all this inflammation in your brain. And they really realize that the big thing with every chronic illness now, because your body can't have a chronic illness due to inflammation without it affecting your brain. It's all going on in your brain. They know this now. You can't separate brain and body out from anything. If it's going on in your body, you have rheumatoid arthritis, you have excessive inflammation in your brain. You're not eating right along with that. You're making your arthritis worse and your brain is getting worse. So it's not unusual to develop other chronic illnesses related to inflammation when you're not dealing with your diabetes, because it's that systemic inflammation that's at the trigger of everything. And then when you add in the stress, everything just kind of goes haywire. Stress doesn't just produce excessive stress hormone. Stress has this interesting ability to mess up almost every part of your metabolism. So the nutrition that your body would need to deal with your blood sugar levels and the amount of inflammation from that, you're not going to get because you're only digesting your food maybe half as much as normal. So this is why diabetics, they say, require something like 6 times as much nutrition in their food because of the amount of inflammation, but also when you're stressed, you're just not digesting food. You don't need your digestion if you're scared and you're going to end up in a fight or running away. You need to channel all that energy from your digestion out into your muscles to get ready to fight or run. And so your body just shuts it off. It's really hard to digest your food when you're stressed. All these things are going on. When you add into the lack of exercise, eating too much trans fat, having a digestive illness like colitis, IBS, something like that. It just leads to further nutritional deficiencies, and that nutritional deficiency then is almost like a starvation mode for all your cells, and then your cells can't repair themselves from the inflammation, and they don't have the actual energy or nutrients to run the normal processes. And when all this is happening in your brain, this is one of the reasons why for years I've been telling everybody that a component of Alzheimer's is actually starvation. It's actually starvation of the brain. And, people wonder how that could be happening because, nobody's starving. But the reality is you can be overweight and be starving. It just means your brain's not getting anything it actually needs. And so the cells themselves are starving, and when the cells are starving, they become even more inflamed, and then basically they become damaged, and they don't function properly. One of the, you can look at all kinds of nutrients, things like choline. Choline is a nutrient your brain absolutely has to have. You can't make acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter that's closely associated with the hippocampus. It's about the speed by which your brain, processes information. It's involved in memories, all kinds of issues in your brain. But 75% of the people in the United States don't have enough choline in their diet, and so it's one of those things that just adds again to your stress. This is one of the reasons why I put so much choline, a really high dose, in my Tianqi, because I know people aren't getting it. They're highly stressed. They need an easy way to absorb choline and to get it up into their brain, and a way to relax and deal with their stress. It's just a natural combination for your brain to deal with stress and to put nutrients for your brain in that formula. I get this question all the time about Tianqi. Why do you have so many brain nutrients in it? Well, because to really have real energy, which is one of the things I like to tell people about is real energy, you have to deal with your stress. And then you have to feed your brain because most people's brains are starving. It's a natural combination to take things for your brain and to deal with your stress. One of the things that was fascinating with me, one of the first few months that I was making my energy drinks were always centered around brain and stress. And one of the things that really got me, peaked about this connection between stress, blood sugar, diabetes, all these brain issues, was we had a client who bought our Tianqi, and he called me up one day and said, "This is the only product I've ever taken that regulates my blood sugar." And I was thinking, wow, that's fascinating. Tell me the story. Turns out the guy always had a 300 level of blood sugar, and when he takes Tianqi, he wakes up and it's always 100. And so to me, I want to figure out that process. And so we kept in touch for a long period of time. And really, when you look at it, it makes sense. Because what happens when you're not stressed, your body is able to regulate its blood sugar more easily because you have normal insulin release, you have normal clearing. You have herbs and Tianqi that strengthen your kidneys, which is the part of your body that's damaged quite extensively when you have diabetes for a long period of time. Your kidneys have to filter all that excessive sugar in your system, and they're almost like a little sponge for all the inflammatory chemicals. So if your sugar is elevated for a long period of time, then your kidneys are going to be suffering. So in traditional Chinese medicine, it's not unusual to just take a kidney tonic if you have a blood sugar imbalance, because their whole idea is to support the body's parts or the body functions that might be weakened by a particular imbalance that you have. So if you have a blood sugar imbalance, then strengthening your kidneys helps to offset your system or to give it more energy where it needs it because of your particular issue you have going on. And so, because I'm a tonic herbalist, I have a lot of kidney tonics in Tianqi anyway. So that's just a kind of a way that they formulate things and the way that I formulate things. It all goes back to how you just support the parts of your body that are under attack when you're dealing with a certain imbalance. And with stress, it's always adaptogens, regulate your stress response, have a healthy stress response, regulate your kidneys, build up your reproductive energy. All that stuff has to do with how your life force consolidates and keeps you in a position to just be healthy and to regulate your entire system. So the best way to really deal with Alzheimer's as a pre-program, if you're looking at it right now, and anybody that's on this call, or you even have kids, you should be talking to them about this, because they now know they can look at your brain and see changes that are leading to this syndrome about 30 years before you'll actually show up with it. Science is getting really specific with their different types of scans and their ability to see the type of inflammation in certain areas of your brain that are going to lead you down the road to having a major imbalance and developing something like dementia or Alzheimer's. In fact, the scariest thing for me and most researchers is looking at the amount of overweight children and diabetes we now have in young kids. People that are 10 years old. There's even been a 10-year-old in this country had a liver transplant from eating too much sugar. Think about that. He had developed non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome, which is basically a long term for saying that your body had so much sugar in it, elevated for so long that the liver became fatty, just like having cirrhosis of the liver, and it was basically started to die. And that's a common thing they say is affecting around 70 million people in this country, is non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome. If you have a big roll of fat around your waist that you just can't seem to get rid of and your diet doesn't work too well, you probably have that imbalance in your liver, and you need to go on a specific program to clean that up, along with a diet of just going on whole foods. So I'm going to kind of move into the 6 steps to improve your memory now and to deal with these blood sugar imbalances, but also the best possible way for you to improve your brain function just on things you have available to you now. And number one, this is the number one thing I tell everybody for almost anything, is to control your stress. And, I've made educating people about stress my mission in life, and I did that for a reason. I spent 15 years behind a counter in a drug herb shop. Actually, it wasn't a drug shop, but an herb shop that specifically just helped people with Chinese herbal products, and realized after a few years there that almost everything that I was dealing with had to do with stress. Now, I lived in LA at the time, and the shop was in Venice Beach, and then I worked in Hollywood, which you can imagine how many people in the movie industry that I dealt with. And that's really a highly stressful career. But the amount of issues that I dealt with on a daily basis was kind of overwhelming. But I realized after a certain period it was all due to stress. So if I put something in somebody's program that helped them deal with stress, and oftentimes I couldn't tell them I was doing it because for some reason no one wants to admit that they're stressed. It's the number one thing that almost everybody in the world has in common, yet nobody wants to admit that stress bothers them in any way. And so, but if I put something in their program for their stress, usually within a month, half of their problems were gone because they started to relax and their body was able to regulate itself and open up all the pathways by which the body deals and regulates internally, and even the amount of nutrition that goes in your cells is affected by your amount of stress, the amount of tension in your body. And so control stress. That is why I make Tianqi. That is why I put herbs in Tianqi that I've been working with for 20 years. And one of the other reasons is that, and this was the turning point for me with adaptogens, because Tianqi and Inner Peace are my 2 flagship stress products, and they're based on a class of herbs called adaptogens. When I got into Chinese herbs, adaptogens weren't even that really on the market in the United States. It was maybe you had access to reishi mushroom, and maybe there was some cordyceps, but cordyceps is not really a true adaptogen, right? But along came rhodiola, and we started using it in the store along with reishi. But I had this experience, which really was a pivotal point in my career as an herbalist, to where I had a client who had come in to see me, didn't really want to take any herbs from me because he had gone to all these amazing herbalists in LA. You know, we have a big Chinatown there. He had went to 6 different people. 2 of them were the heads of local acupuncture schools and trained in China, all these, you know, very famous herbalists. And he didn't get any relief from anybody. He had chronic fatigue, couldn't get out of bed, no motivation, just couldn't wake up before noon. And so, you know, he had come in the store and talked to me 5 or 6 times. He was actually a roommate of a friend of mine. And one day, my friend actually did some work for me. So I gave him a box of my new adaptogenic formula with a lot of rhodiola. And he took it home, and because he's a nice guy, he gave it to his roommate. And 4 days later, 3 or 4 days later, his roommate woke up with energy and started cleaning the house, and his whole life changed. And all he did was take an adaptogenic herb, which while he was sleeping caused his nervous system to calm and his body to go back into a state of stopping cortisol and trigger a rebuilding mode in his adrenals. And after 3 or 4 days, the guy, you know, my friend told me, the guy woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning vacuuming the living room. I thought somebody had broke into the house, he told me, because his roommate had never got out of bed before noon or 1 o'clock. But that was just a shift in his energy because his body was stuck in chronic stress, meaning his nervous system never shut down, his adrenals never went into the mode where they soaked up energy. And so he took this, and about the 3rd day, he just had the deepest sleep and woke up, his body had shifted, and he started to feel different. And that started my whole path on adaptogens and just dealing with stress and teaching people about stress. And really that was the beginning of getting into making Tianqi and inner peace. So that's your number one thing. Control your stress. You know, it's even more important today because Tianqi is a stress and brain formula. It's great for your memory, has B vitamins in it. They're great for your memory. Choline, DMG, all these different nutrients that have an effect not only on certain glands in your brain, but the energy centers associated with them, so your brain has this ability to go into its own homeostasis and start to correct itself. And then it has the nutrients there to actually allow that to happen. Number 2, you have to control your blood sugar, and that's the easiest way to do that is go on a diet consisting of just whole foods. Now, you know, basically you want to not eating anything unless it's in its whole food state, meaning you don't want to be eating a lot out of cans, boxes, or packages. You really want to be concentrating on fresh produce, whole grains if you need them. You want to be concentrating on food in its natural state because it's easy to fill up on that without spiking your blood sugar too much. And your whole body will just love it because you'll start to regulate your sugar. You'll start to get more nutrition into your system, and you'll probably lose 5 or 10 pounds without even trying. You know, look at most vegetables that are on the low glycemic level. I was looking at a food that I love to eat the other day called buckwheat. I don't know if a lot of people eat that, but I love buckwheat waffles or pancakes. And usually I just make them with buckwheat. I don't add anything to it. Sometimes some coconut flour, but I found out that that buckwheat actually lowers your A1C, which is your blood sugar levels over a period of time. So it's very fascinating to me. But the other thing is it's a seed, and it's really tasty, and it's actually good for you. And so if you're someone that's on a gluten-free diet, that's a great grain to add into your diet. And also remember that if you're trying to control your blood sugar and you're trying to control your stress, eating something that you're allergic to actually causes a stress response. This is the other thing about sugar that most people don't realize. When you eat too much sugar, which is, you know, it doesn't have to be that much. You drink a sweet drink that has 20 grams of sugar in it, you just cause yourself to have a stress response. So you're not going to be clearing that sugar out like you should be as well because the stress response is messing up with your insulin response, and the whole body is going into a state of fight or flight just from having too much sweets. The same thing happens if you're eating gluten and you're allergic to wheat or gluten. That allergy causes you to have a stress response. So clean up your diet, look at what's excessive. If you have some excessive weight around your middle, that means you got to go on a calorie-restricted diet. Look at my website, my HerbWorks website for lectures. I have some on how to go on the diet and regulate your blood sugar. It's a great time to go back to that site and listen to that talk again. Number 3 is exercise. Right now they know that probably one of the top 2 or 3 things you could ever do for your brain as far as clearing up inflammation and actually stimulating its own production of antioxidants is to exercise. Do something that really gets your heart moving every day. It could be, if you can't do that, even if you just get out and walk for 30 minutes and walk briskly, but anything that's exercise actually helps your brain tremendously. Go out and do it. It's summertime of the year. If you're not living in Nevada like I am, you can actually go outside. Go outside and walk. Get 30 minutes of exercise. Join the gym. Buy some weights. Lift them at home. It doesn't take that much, but do something. You have to exercise. It's one of the best things in the world for helping your body burn up sugar and helping your brain to clear inflammation and build its own antioxidant. Number 4, you should supplement. Make sure you're taking a multivitamin or a B vitamin. Your brain needs it, especially if you're stressed. You need some extra vitamins during the day. Tianchi has some great B vitamins in it, but you might be missing something nutrition-wise. And if you're really worried about your brain, look into all those different aspects. Maybe get a test done to see what you're deficient in and clear up your deficiencies in vitamins. Remember, if you've had blood sugar issues for years and you're pre-diabetic, or, now they call pre-diabetes pre-dementia. So if you're in that condition, that means you've probably been lacking in nutrition for years. Have some tests done and find out exactly what you need. One of my big ones I like to tell people is don't multitask. I know this is easy to tell men because men hate multitasking, especially when they get older. But multitasking does not lay down memory. If you have a list of things to do one of them and get it done, and then move on to the next and get it done. Multitasking is disrupts your brain function. You don't lay down memory, it's going to be hard for you to remember anything you worked on the next day or the day after, and it's becoming a major issue with people's brains. Now, women can handle it a little bit better than men because that's part of their nature. They've always had to multitask, but it's not great for your brain. In fact, I've even seen Susie Orman on PBS talk about the fact that you should never multitask. So then the last one, I just, try and eat some omega-3 fats every day. If you're not having, this kind of fits in with the one on food, but this is really just about fat, the fat component that your brain needs. They've talked about coconut oil being good for Alzheimer's. Well, it's not a cure for Alzheimer's, even though they tell you that on the internet. But if you react really well to coconut oil and you feel like your brain has more energy, that's a sign that your brain has been insulin resistant, because coconut oil and the medium chain triglycerides in coconut are supplying your brain with an alternative energy source, and they don't have enough energy because their cells are insulin resistant. So if you get a boost from coconut oil right away, you know that, number one, you need coconut oil. It's good for your brain. But two, you know that you have an imbalance going on. You need to be dealing with that, with, dealing with your stress and eating whole foods. You need to be doing both of those because you're already in that pre-diabetic, pre-dementia stage. So eat healthy fats, add some salmon to your diet. If you can't, have some healthy omega-3s. You can get that from a vegetarian capsule. You can get it from, fish oil. But add some healthy fats in your diet. They'll even help you regulate your sugar. Don't ever go on a low-fat diet if you're trying to regulate your blood sugar. The two of them don't go together. It's much easier to eat more fats. And so I'm going to wrap it up there, Zach, if you want to cut over to doing some questions and answers.
Absolutely. Awesome information, Roger, as usual. Okay, I'm going to open this up for questions and answers. What you'll need to do is go ahead and hit *6 on your phone. Also, if you want to learn more about Roger's formulas, I've been taking them now for over 10 years. Tianchi and Inner Peace you can find at HerbWorks.com. And Roger, you talked about the guy that had a life-changing experience by just taking adaptogenic herbs, and that's exactly what happened to me 10 years ago when I drank Tianchi, or the version of what Tianchi is today. But pretty amazing stuff, and if you haven't tried it, you definitely should. Oh, here we go. We got 2 callers in. First one's calling from area code 508, ending in 6104. Calling online.
Hi, yes. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the phenomenon with a lot of people on Adderall and things like that, and how that would affect this dementia and this stress thing. I know it's not good.
I'll talk about it just a little bit. I'm actually going to do a call on ADD, I think, later this month. But one of the things you have to realize about Adderall is that they've published many reports on it and how it affects the brain. It basically affects the brain exactly like cocaine. And so, anytime you overdrive an area of your brain like that with drugs, so to say, it's not beneficial. It's going to cause an extreme imbalance. And the other problem with Adderall is that a lot of research kind of points to the fact that it creates other drug addictions. In other words, you get so up from that you always have to have it, and you're always looking for other things to actually deal with it. And one of the components of ADD and one of the problems with it and why they give you Adderall is that it causes some of the energy of your brain to go up in the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe with people with ADD just never turns on. In fact, when they're trying to do something creative or focus on something, that part of the brain actually gets weaker. And it's interesting because when you're highly stressed, the same thing happens. The energy withdrawals from your frontal lobe. That's why it's hard to make good decisions when you're stressed. And all your energy goes down in the lower part of your brain just in the stress response. So, it's probably very beneficial for people with that condition to do something that helps them with their stress response, because it's just a natural place they're going to end up almost all the time because their brain's imbalanced. So, the nice thing about certain herbs too, like rhodiola and reishi, is that they open up the frontal lobe of your brain. So it makes it easier.
Any suggestions of people trying to withdraw from that Adderall?
We have a lot of people that love taking Tianchi that have that imbalance.
Yeah, I do like taking Tianchi. I'm just trying to wean myself off the other, but okay, thank you.